Okay, another video here. Over the last 24 hours, again, I've been reading a course and I've been watching seminars and videos and things as I do, just trying to build up content around what I'm trying to achieve in my own life and the things that I'm learning. One of which is a guy I'm following currently called Kyle Cease. Now, he's quite a big speaker in America, quite a he used to be a comedian, but he's now in the transformational field, and he talks about change mostly on his in his shows. One of which he was talking around the story in nature, one of the biggest metamorphoses, or metamorphoses, I don't know, in nature is where you get a caterpillar moving into a butterfly. It sort of rings true for change in our own lives because he mentions that if a caterpillar is moving along and thinking that all he's ever going to be is a caterpillar, then when it comes to the time that he moves into the cocoon, he sees that as the death of himself. But ultimately, if you've got the caterpillar moving along thinking eventually I'm going to be a butterfly, then he sees the cocoon side of it as more of a rebirth or a birth to his new story. And I think when we are looking to change in any particular way, there is a kind of resistance that shows up. And you've got to. I think in order to embrace this, you've got to keep asking yourself, especially when you're in these this sort of resistance stage. Kyle C says, "What in me is trying to emerge?" That was a quote from Michael Beckwith. But basically, what in me at this point is trying to emerge? This resistance that we come across is something that I suppose you could call it. Well, there's a fear involved, fear essentially is another quite a good analogy of fear is false evidence appearing real. There's the letters of fear. And so you're essentially resisting your old story. I mean, when we talk about past stories, we say, well, okay, I've tried this type of thing before. I've been on the treadmill for a few weeks and it's not worked, or I've given up eventually, etc., etc. So you're living in your past story, and then you start resisting it. So you're creating this fear. So essentially, we are the source in some ways of our own fear. So, I find it sort of it's interesting that you get to these points where you want to do something different, and there is an opportunity to change. And ultimately, we default into our backstory or our past story. We then resist the change itself, and we find ourselves arguing with ourselves almost. And this creates this kind of anxiety that don't feel as though you're going to be moving. You're not moving forward. I suppose also it comes down to accepting things. A lot of the stuff on my videos I talk about is to do with allowing, excuse me, or accepting where you are at this particular point in time, not thinking about the past and not thinking about the future. It's basically saying, look, am I going to accept this current moment in my life, or am I just going to continue arguing with it? Rather than sort of accepting it so that you have the opportunity to move on. I mean, it's almost like we're disqualifying things because essentially we're allowing our past story to dominate this idea. I keep talking about infinite possibilities. I really do now believe that we are all infinite, beings, and we are capable of absolutely anything. And it's just this resistance that we keep coming up against. And pretty much of the changes that I've been, attempting to make in my life, the resistance has come from my past story. And I think, if you're living in that area and you're also creating resistance to it, then there's a little bit of madness going on there. Particularly, I would probably label it more around about anxiety and frustration. I know particularly with the changes that I'm attempting to make, I've come up against this quite a lot. So I like the idea that nature is quite a good indicator of change, and we can also bring it into our own lives in a very similar way. So it's a case of accepting where you are right now, accepting your circumstances, rather than resisting it, arguing with yourself. Um, and I like the analogy of fear, false evidence appearing real. It's all the stuff that you've created, uh, particularly the limitations. And at the moment, going forward, if you take the idea that you are not going to buy into limitations anymore, then change becomes a little bit more of an easier jump or an easier leap to make. So, very quick one there, but quite important nevertheless.